Hey guys, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. So I've come here with a different type of video today. I know that everybody who has purchased a Hobonichi for 2023 would have received a sample of the new TOMOE river paper that will be introduced into the Hobonichi Cousin and the Hobonichi A6 in 2024. And then this paper, or I think a yellower version of this paper, will be introduced to the Hobonichi Weeks in 2025. So what I wanted to do today was actually just go over some of the differences that I notice. I'm not an expert at all on TOMOE river paper, but I have been using it for the past year. Again, caveat, I am no expert in this. I'm just letting you know what I find different about it, what's similar, what my preferences are, and I'll show you a few ink swatches and some writing samples as well. Let's get started. Okay, so what I have here is my Hobonichi A6 notebook, and this has the old TOMOE river paper. And then this here is the sample that was given with my Hobonichi Cousin Avec. And first thing that I notice when I'm feeling the paper in between my fingers, and this is one thing that I've noticed other people have said as well about this, is that the older TOMOE river paper actually does feel thinner. And then the older TOMOE river paper still feels like it has a bit of a coating on it, whereas this one feels a bit toothier. Those are my first impressions. So what I want to do now then is go ahead and start doing ink samples, so ink swatches, and then do some writing samples as well. This is a smaller section than I'm used to. I think this is pocket size. So I'm going to be swatching some very good basic inks to go from a Pilot ink, a chromo shading ink like one of the Sailors, and a sheening ink. Let's get started on that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just do a speed through of all of the swatching and writing with my glass dip pen, and then I'll go over all of the comparisons afterwards. Okay, so now that most of them have had time to dry, it's interesting to see just even the slight differences. I will say, as a caveat, as a fountain pen user, my first impressions are with writing with a glass pen, I didn't notice a very, very, very big difference. What I did notice though was that I felt more feedback on the newer TOMOE river paper than on the old TOMOE river paper. Some people may see that as scratchy. I feel like the word feedback can be very subjective because we all have different feelings of what we like for smoothness. So I say that I felt a little more feedback on the new TOMOE river paper, and I feel that the older TOMOE river paper is smoother. Again, I feel like it's that coating on that paper. And even when I wrote with my Pilot Kakuno, it did feel like it was a little bit toothier. But saying that, look at the difference in the width of the Pilot Kakuno on the new TOMOE river paper versus the old TOMOE river paper. So the fine nib looks finer on the old TOMOE river paper than it does on the new. But then let's go ahead and look at the shading. The shading doesn't look too different when it comes to Sailor Ink Studio 123. It does seem like it's a little bit lighter on the old TOMOE river paper, and there's more green and purple that's showing on here, whereas this seems like the shading is darker, if that makes sense. And then in Sailor Manyo Haha, it's still drying actually on the newer TOMOE river paper, but it seems like it's lighter on the older TOMOE river paper versus the newer. I mean, the writing sample looks slightly darker on the new paper versus the old, but you can see a lot more shading, I think, on this one. Like you can see more of the purples and the greens in the writing sample versus in this one. And you can kind of, I don't know, just this swatch looks darker to me in person than it does what you can see on camera. And then the one underneath that, I did Robert Oster Gold Antica. And I don't know if it's maybe that I did this first with the paintbrush and then this second, but just even they look different on the two different papers. This looks darker on the older TOMOE River paper and then lighter on the new. But in the writing sample, maybe it's just because of how much ink I had left on the glass nib. I don't know, but in the paint swatch, it does look different. Let me know if you guys can see that difference. And then in the Konpeki, see more sheening on the older paper, and there isn't really any sheening in the paint swatch on the new paper, which is interesting. And I mean, in the writing sample, there is a bit more sheening here, but I can't see too much here. Maybe a little bit on the edges, but I'm surprised not to see any in the paint swatch itself. And then in Diamine Writer's Blood, maybe it's just me, but it does look darker on the older paper versus the new. And like I said, it felt like more ink came off of the pen in the newer paper versus the older paper. And then lastly, like one of the sheening monsters in my collection, I don't use this ink very often, so it feels like the sheen is more pronounced in the older paper versus the sheen on here looks a little flat. Can you see that? Like you can really see you can see the reflection of my ring light in here, but let me move this here, but you can't really see it as much. The sheen looks a little flat on the new TOMOE River paper. And then quickly just flipping to the back of these pages. So there is a bit of shadow on the back, but no bleed through. So that I think is very similar to what TOMOE River paper actually currently does, is that it has the shadowing. So let's look at this closer this way. So actually the Rose Gold Antica seemed to show through a little bit more on the older paper than on the newer, and definitely the Organic Studio bled through a little bit on the older paper versus the new. So there's some differences actually. It seems like the thicker paper for the newer TOMOE River paper is better for bleed through and shadowing. I don't know. I mean, I will definitely still use it in my Hobonichi. I mean, I don't choose TOMOE River paper necessarily for the sheening properties. I have very few inks that do have sheen, although now you can see it really, I can see it really well in the writing sample. You can see the sheen a lot there, but it really is more pronounced. Oh, interesting. It's so interesting doing these tests, and I know these aren't like scientific or anything like that. They're not done in a controlled setting in a lab or anything, but it's interesting to see the different tests. I know there's going to be quite a few videos that come out over the next few weeks with different tests, and everybody's opinion is going to be different. For me personally, I haven't used the older TOMOE River paper long enough to say that I will never be able to use another paper. While I do love the TOMOE River paper, I think I will be just fine with the newer TOMOE River paper. I've said older and newer so much in this video. But let me know what your thoughts are from this test. I hope it gave you guys some insight into it. I know it wasn't, again, a very long and very, again, scientific test. There are so many other videos out there, so like blog posts by Foodafan and Inky Rocks that have done tests on different types of TOMOE River paper, so I highly recommend watching their videos. But this is just my opinion and my different swatches and comparing the two. So, you know, when the new TOMOE River paper does come out in the Hobonichis for 2024, I'll still be happy to purchase it and use it. And I'm just really happy, and I think it's great that Hobonichi actually did give us a sample of these papers to try out so that we're better prepared for when it does come into our planners in 2024. All right, but that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have yourselves a great day.